Hey YouTube, this is Adrianoni22 coming at you guys with my friend's Landorus Lucario deck. So let's go ahead and get started.
Pop color here. I'm going to show you my variant of Landorus Lucario. It's actually pretty standard so far right now. 3 Landorus EX. Essentially, he's going to be your main hitter card. He has 180 HP, fighting type Pokemon, very strong. One drawback, he's very heavy. Hammerhead is mostly the attack that you want to do. It does 30 to the active, 30 to the bench. In the new fighting set, this thing will get powered up first turn. The first turn game is real with this deck. We'll explain later. Next is going to be 3 Lucario. It's going to be your second main attacker. This is a great card, more to me as a tech rather than attacker. If you happen to start with it, you're able to hit for the 30, not necessarily on the bench, but for the 30 active. If you keep him out second turn, you get to keep your hand recharged. So running this bad boy at 3 is actually good. Next we have 2 Landorus. This came out of Furious Fist. This is more or less of a, not necessarily an energy acceleration. It gets it back for you. It's a recycle. I don't find myself using this too much unless I'm actually hurting for the energy. It is a good start to start with as well. Ultra Ball, Computer Search, drop your energy, still get it back. So it's not like you're really paying a cost at all. Next we have the Machamp line. I run a 3-1-3 version of the Machamp. I take the new Machamp, 1 energy. If you happen to start with it, with the perfect setup, you can do about 70 damage to an EX Pokemon. It's actually really good. I chose to opt to the Last Chance Chop Machoke instead of the new one.
Why would you make that choice?
1 energy. I'm trying to keep to a bare minimum of how many energy I have to attach to attack. If I end up being stuck with the Machoke in the active spot, at least for 1 energy I can hit for 20. It being a strong energy, a muscle band in a gym, that's hitting for 80 damage to an EX. It's actually a better choice. And then you run the Machamp. The Machamp has the ability for, while he's in play, each of your fighting types Pokemon's attack is increased by 20 more. And it stacks. The more Machamp you have, the stronger you get. I run 3, that's 60 plus. If you happen to attack with him, he actually affects himself. So that 80 damage turns into 100 plus all the other buffs. He actually has a very decent attack too. During your opponent's turn, when he attacks, all damage done to him next turn by your opponent is reduced by 40. Of course that can be reset, but if they happen to attack with it, you can still reset. You take less damage. Next is just going to be the supporter lineup. The supporter lineup, I chose to go with the standard line of supporters. I chose the 4 Juniper. I chose 3 Karina. In a fighting deck, I choose Karina over Skyla, or I treat Karina as Skyla. I also treat her as my ball replacements as well. So I run 3. 4 was too much, 2 was too little, 3 was perfect for me. I run 3N. This is a perfect start. This is a perfect end game card. It's just one of those ones that you run. I run 1 Lysandre, and I run 1 Chorus. That's a low supporter count, to be honest. It's about 12 supporters that I run. Now for my items, I run a Computer Search as my A-Spec. It's going to be an aggressive deck. There's some times where you want to get your strong energy, and this card is the one card that can search it out. I chose again Scramble Switch and Dowsing Machine. Dowsing Machine only gets items and trainers back, but not your energy, and Scramble Switch, I never found myself using it too often. I run 4 Muscle Band. This is part of the power to the deck. Strong Energy Muscle Band is a plus 40 to all of your attacks. It's a great card to use. Now with my low supporter count, I run 3 random receivers. This will keep your supporter line healthy. Whenever you need a supporter, you don't, in my build, I don't run too many dirt supporters. I run 1 of Chorus and Lysandre, so I don't have to chance into them. That means I have a higher chance for my Juniper, for my End, and for my Karinas. So the 3 randoms are good. If you find yourself hurting for for your supporters. You can always use Karina, search for a fighting Pokemon, Lucario, Landorus, Machamp, whatever. Search for another random receiver. That'll guarantee you get another supporter next turn. Now, since I'm running Stage 2, I'm running the 3 rare candies. Great combo. You have a Machop on bench. You use Karina, grab a rare candy, grab a Machamp. You can evolve that turn. I run 3 escape ropes. Escape ropes are my switches in this deck. I also run 1 switch. Since you're running single energy attackers, escape rope will really disrupt your opponent, and you can bring up anything that you can attach 1 energy and keep the pressure up. It also helps keeping fatty out of there. The Landorus are too fat for this deck without the escape ropes. And I run the 1 switch because sometimes I don't want my opponent to bring up a card. I'll search for the switch instead. I run 2 Ultra Ball. With Karinas in play, you don't need to search out for all of your Pokemon, but there's those chances where you don't have your Karina and you can still Ultra Ball for the 1 card you need. It's also good if you drop your fighting energies, you have baby Lando up in front, have him attach the energies that you drop for the deck. I run 1 Ash. It's just for the recycle. We lost Super Rod in this upcoming rotation, so the Sacred Ash is my replacement for that. I run 1 letter. I run 10 energy in this deck. Running 1 letter, if I need the energy, I can still use Karina to get my fighting Pokemon, to get my letter, to get my energy. So it's a good tech 1-of. I run 1 megaphone. With Item Wars and the new fighting set going to be big, I should run this at more. I don't opt to do so just because this is more or less to get rid of Garbodor, to get rid of that 1 item, but I don't really care for cards like this, although running 1-of is still good. Now I run 3 stadiums. In a meta where Stadium Wars are going to be big, 4 is too much, 2 is too little, and the fighting stadium at 3 is just good. It gives each fighting Pokemon that both you and your opponent control do 20 extra damage to an EX Pokemon. So don't get it confused, it's not just 20 plus, it does have speculations, but it'll also help you win those Stadium Wars too. They're playing Fairy Garden, they're playing Burbank, and they are not running EXs for some reason. You can still play this to get rid of their advantage. Now for the energy, I run 4 strong energy. This is the new special energy that came out. What it does is it increases, it can only be attached to a fighting type Pokemon. It'll increase that fighting type's Pokemon's damage by 20, and if it's on another Pokemon that isn't a fighting type, it instantly gets discarded. Some people ask how. There's ways to do it, and there's combos around it, but this is one of the main strong points of the deck. Between a fighting energy, a muscle band, the Machamp, and a stadium, with a Lando, you can do 110 damage on your second turn, not necessarily your first, which is Darkrai damage early game. And then I just run 6 normal fighting, which brings my energy count to 10. Since this deck is mostly a single energy attacking deck, running heavy on energy is not necessary.
Okay. So real quick, just to get into a little bit more detail, what are some advantages and some disadvantages of the build that you've chosen, that you've come across so far? What are some things that have kind of hindered you, and what are some things that you've been able to get around with ease, whereas in the past you may not have been able to with Landorus?
Well, the first turn donk is real. When you're facing decks that need time to set up, you have the advantage of destroying that again. Hindrances is it's not a complete immortal deck. This deck is going to be top tier, but it's not going to be so broken that nobody can beat it. It has 2 major weaknesses, which is going to be water and psychic.
Which means Blastoise Mewtwo is real.
Which means Blastoise is going to be good, and Mewtwo can still counter it. To be honest, it's going to be Deoxys that hurts heavier this deck than it does Mewtwo. But that's why you run the 2 main attackers, being the Lando and the Lucario. If they're playing Psychics, you play Lando. If they're playing Water, you play Lucario. So you can work around it, it's just a little tough to do so. Another thing is Pyroar. The only non-basic attacker that I have is Machamp, Machoke, and Machop. Or, excuse me, Machamp and Machoke, because Machop is a basic. But Pyroar's ability only activates with the attack. Any secondary effects to go through will still happen. If they have a Pyroar on the bench, Landorus can still hammerhead that Pyroar on the bench.
It's unaffected by basics, therefore.
By basic attacks, not the effects of attacks. Since hammerheads to do 30 to the bench is an effect to an attack, it can still hit that bench Pokemon.
Okay.
Another thing is Suicune. I don't know how many Suicunes are going to be running around now that Fairy Toolbox is out, but Suicune is unaffected by EXs. That means I have to make do with my Landorus and my Machamp to attack it. Unfortunately, Landorus is weak to Suicune, so if I can't hit that 100 damage with this Landorus, I have to focus. They get the prize, I don't. So it's mostly stun cards like that. Now there are variants of this deck that run Garbodor. I opt to run Garbodor for consistency. Karina allows me to search out my
Machamp. You opt to run Machamp.
I opted out to run Garbodor.
Oh.
Karina allows for consistency for the Machamp. Karina does not allow consistency for the Garbodor. Therefore, I'm wasting more resources with Ultra Balls and other things to get on a Garbodor rather than a Machamp.
So it just became more consistent to keep the build basically pure fighting type, but with multiple weaknesses.
Exactly. You have multiple weaknesses that you can work around with the fighting build, rather than just worry about a card that's so vulnerable to everything. Being the Megaphone, being the Lysandre, being the Escape Rope, anything is actually really vulnerable to that.
All right, so before we stop here, is there anything else about this build that you would like to tell our viewers? Any tips to anybody who wants to try and build a similar type of build?
If you don't have the money to drop on Landorus, or you just can't get a hold of it at all, there's a Dragon's Exalted Stunfisk that came out that got reprinted in Legendary's collection. It has the attack Muddy Water and Rumble. It was used as a replacement for Landorus when Landorus first came out, and it's being used as a replacement for the same Landorus now. It takes 1 energy, Muddy Water does 20 to the active, 20 to the bench, and then for another energy does Rumble, which is 40 damage. With all the boost to it, it's going to do a lot of damage. That Stunfisk is a good alternative to Landorus. I just like Landorus because it's bulkier. Other than that, Lucario's for consistency. Right now we don't have a consistent fighting type other than Lucario. 2 energies, you get to draw until you have 6. That's better than nothing. Anyone who wants to build a similar build, just buy into the Furious Fist and ask your friends for Stunfisk, and you can build a similar deck like this.
Alright guys, so this has been Pup Color and Adrianori22 with his Landorus Lucario deck. Please leave your comments down below if you have any questions, comments, concerns. Also leave a like and please subscribe. Thanks guys.